You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you with me here this week. And I always talk about this special club. I hope you're not tired of me saying it, but some of you aren't, because I keep getting new members to this club every week when I talk about it. Patreon.com/counterflow, $5 or more per month gets you into this club where we once a month get a special Zoom call between you guys, myself, and a special guest. It's not published. It's not recorded. It's private. Like I joked last week, it's between you, me, my guest, and the CIA, right? Well, okay. I'm about to nail down the date and the guest for this month, the month of March. I will be announcing that date and the time to the people in that club. I've got access to do that. And it's interesting. I sent out a message to everyone in the club and said, who do you want to be the guest this month of March? It's fascinating how many people said the same person. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. He and I are, maybe that kind of gave some away. I said he, not she. He and I are still working on nailing down a date, but many of you said the same person. The other hint is this person has been on the show a couple of times. So there you go. As for this episode, this is a good one. This is a spicy one. And I know it's going to get some good feedback. Maybe some negative, but I think it's going to get a lot of positive. A lot of the things said in this episode are things that need to be said, because there's this, I like to call it the satanic dialectic that gets set up by the evil one. We'll say, where you're only presented two sides of something. And if you don't choose one, that means you're for the other. Or if you don't choose the other, well, you must be for this thing, without any nuance, right? Because the devil hates nuance. That's where all the good details are often. And so if you don't like leftist, progressive, evil, feminist attitudes and the philosophy, the ideology, the themes within that unfortunately do permeate our society, I have to say, well, then you better be some kind of misogynistic right-wing jerk that just hates on women. But start to think about it, and you're using the exact same energy as the people on the left. It's just the mirror image of it. And so that doesn't make it any better. In fact, some may say it makes it worse, but it's at least the same evil energy. Whereas if you have a little bit of nuance and you can put some thought into things, and if you're Christian, Orthodox Christian, any kind of Christian, but Orthodoxy is what we talk about a lot on this show, you wouldn't fall to either side of this. You'd fall into what the saints and Father Turbo, of course, and they call the royal path, right? So that's kind of what this episode's about. And I've got my friends, Amy and Julie Mastrine, on the show. Julie's been on before. I should have looked up the episode number, but you guys know how to work technology. She was on prior to this episode months and months and months ago, talking about her journey out of progressive, leftist, feminist hell into Orthodoxy. And now, for the first time, I've got her sister on. And really, for the first time, like I discuss in this, it's the first time I've had identical twins on the show. So maybe a hint to those of you who have not subscribed to the show on YouTube. This is a good one to watch on YouTube. And if you've not done that, go do it and hit subscribe. Amy and Julie Mastrine are identical twin sisters. Like I said, Amy is an artist, Julie is a writer, and they both like to write and discuss topics on relationships, culture. They're Orthodox Christians, and they speak and write at their Substack and podcast, The Mystic Sisters. Here we go. Let's get into this one right now. The first set of identical twins to ever be on the show, Julie and Amy Mastrine. Welcome to Counterflow.
Hi, Buck. Thanks for having us. Hello. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, as the giggles start. So I guess we'll jump in. Well, before we jump in, this is going to be, I already know, it's such a simplified topic compared to some of like the deep more religious topics or some of the stuff we talk about on here. But this will get a lot of heat and a lot of positive feedback back and forth. I feel it because I know my crowd. But before we get into it, we'll let you guys introduce yourself. Y'all can pick who goes first. We're about to find out who the alpha twin is.
I'll go first.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. I'll go first because Amy starts with A. So I'm Amy. I'm Amy the artist on Twitter and Instagram. I'm an artist and worked in marketing and psychedelics for a long time. Recently left that, doing art full time now. And I'm a Orthodox Christian convert. So, yeah. And I'm Julie. I am a writer and I do work for All Sides, which is a media bias ratings and balanced news company. So I also consult with journalists on helping them to reduce political bias in their writing. And I'm Orthodox too, and I'm also an Orthodox convert.
Excellent. Okay, so around the same time I started seeing you two tweet about similar things, I wrote a tweet that I'll read real quick for my audience because it's got a similar theme, and I didn't know we were going to do this episode. I didn't really even know y'all were feeling a similar way, but I quickly found out afterwards. There's a right-wing version of the lefty beta male feminist. In my opinion, it's the Andrew Tate / faux jock / faux macho orientation, similar spirits. And I guess if that's not obvious enough, what I meant by it is everyone can see people in our circles, in our milieu, the feminist man. It's all over the place. Y'all came from San Francisco. It's really all over the place there. And we're all annoyed by the soft beta progressive men. And unfortunately, rather than like a centered reaction to that, there's a extreme opposite reaction of it. And in my opinion, it's the same spirit. And so that's this like uber misogynistic, and I hate using the term toxic masculinity, but it is appropriate at times. Unfortunately, it's been overused to describe just regular men as well. However, there is toxic masculinity, and so we're kind of that's what we'll get into. And then let's just go from this. That's basically my little intro for it. And I know you have a lot of words to say.
Yeah, that was a great intro. And I think I concluded there's toxic femininity, there is toxic masculinity. These things are real. I just wanted to point that out. It's I think sometimes people who yell about toxic masculinity are not identifying it correctly, and they won't admit that there's toxic femininity too. But we're going to talk about this Andrew Tateification that are in I would call it Christian adjacent circles, or even some Christian men like Andrew Tate, which to me is confusing because he's really misogynistic and he converted to Islam. So I'm not really yeah. It just feels like there's a reaction to the damaging message of liberal feminism and how liberal feminism sort of denigrates masculinity, including healthy masculinity, as toxic. So it's misidentifying problems that aren't problems. So then men are now kind of reacting to that, especially people like Andrew Tate, and then young men are following him. They're reacting to that denigration with a puffed up macho, kind of distorted version of masculinity, which also what comes with that is often some really bad views about women. Yeah. And some of their messaging in trying to refute liberal feminism is doing damage in other ways. So these are often people who value marriage and family. I don't know about Tate, but these are people we're seeing online who do value marriage and family. They are reacting against hookup culture, which I totally agree is a terrible thing and should be eradicated. But in this reaction space, they sometimes have a very uncharitable message to women, particularly women who are 30 and over. There's a lot of, that's the big scapegoat. there's a lot of guys online who say, you know, if you're 30 and unmarried, you're done. You have an empty egg carton. No one's going to love you. You screwed up your life by engaging in hookup culture, and you're never going to find happiness, and you're damaged goods, they say, which is a really secular mindset because they're talking about women as if they're consumer goods and like a product. It's very like capitalistic consumer way of thinking about human beings. And if you're, you know, not a secularist and you have like a spiritual framework, you would know that like you would probably believe in redemption and like forgiveness and genuine change in people. And you would just never say that to somebody. Like, so people aren't like goods that can be used up and damaged. Like, and it's not to say that hookup culture doesn't do damage. It does. It does damage people. But what we've been seeing lately online is like some men who are saying like, oh, I don't want to marry a woman who's slept with more than X number of men, like 7 guys or whatever. And so we were thinking about this and we're like, well, you know, that's not the Christian message at all, because and again, this is not to at all defend hookup culture, but it's to defend redemption and repentance. So when men say that, and they say they're Christians, but they say, well, if she's done X, Y, Z, I don't want her, and blah, blah, blah. And on the one hand, it's good to hold people to a standard and to start to tell women that it's bad to sleep around. Yes, absolutely. But when you take that message a little too far and you say, you are irredeemable if you've done bad things, that is not a Christian message. Many of the saints did terrible things. And like Bishop Fulton Sheen talks about the idea of divine ignorance. So the idea that Christ doesn't care, he's ready to forgive any of our sins. He forgets about the sins we've committed and focuses on us now being back in right relationship with him. So the problem we have with this message that we're hearing from some men who are trying to orient in the right direction, but then kind of saying these damaging things in the process, is that the message is like almost too materialistic and
yes,
I don't know, irredemptive is a word, but and it does damage to young women who hear this and go, well, I guess I'm done because I did bad things and now I'm irredeemable. And if that's true, there's no reason for her to stop sleeping around. Like if you're actually like never forgiven, you're damaged, you slept with a magic number of men that's too many in your 20s, that makes you no longer valuable, then there's really no reason to not continue that path because you're already damaged goods, as they say. So it's all very like arbitrary and just a really uncharitable way of looking at human beings. And it's odd because these men in these manosphere circles will like point to data that shows, I don't know exactly what it is, that like if the more number of sexual partners someone had, the greater likelihood of divorce or something in their marriage. But even I find that a little odd because these same people were angry at the left for always pointing to the science around COVID, right? And it's their version of, well, the science says.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and what it is again, it's a message of despair because it's saying, well, if you've done bad things in your past, you can't have a good and healthy marriage. You're done and that's it. And it doesn't, there's no hope. There's no path forward, right? There's no way to have a new life with that type of messaging. So I just find it really uncharitable. And especially since we have such a toxic and damaging culture of hookup culture that young women are just enmeshed in, if that's the message, these women aren't going to come out of it. They're going to go, I guess, like they already think I'm worthless. Yeah. So why would I join their side? And there's this problem, why change on kind of like the right of like, there's not a lot of conservative women. There's not a lot of Christian women. And it's like, because you're not really approaching them with like a loving message. You're
correct.
You're very hard on them. And maybe men respond to bullying, but women really don't. So if your approach is going to be like fear mongering, like, well, you're going to be done for when you're 30 and all your eggs are gone and you're going to be miserable and if you don't get married, women don't respond to messaging like that in a way that's going to like bring them over to your side. And it's not to say that, because like shame is a motivating factor for changing, right? It's good to like feel shame and then we change, hopefully. But to like bully and be harsh to young women who are confused, because a lot of young women are living, they're all living in an inverted culture that tells them if they sleep with a man, that's how you get commitment. At least a lot of women think that, which is totally wrong, and is not how things work. But a lot of women are engaging in this behavior because they think that's how they'll like get a man to stick around if they give him what he wants. So it's not, there's the other side of, there's so much lack of charity around like why women end up in this state or having a lot of sexual partners or whatever. And it's just such a damaging narrative that really lacks understanding of like why this is happening. Yeah.
And to your point about she might as well just keep doing what she's doing. That's why, in my opinion, it's the same energy, right? So there's demonic energy works in various ways, but it can still be demonic energy. And it's like a church that if someone came to knock on the door, which is what Christ said to do in Revelation, if someone came to knock on the door, it's not that the door's just not wide open, and you looked at them and said, I don't like the way they look, and shut the door on them, you're creating atheists, right? You're an atheist factory, but your purpose is to be a church. So it's really the opposite of that. So these guys that pretend to, I'm not in the same, I don't see it as much as you guys do, luckily, because it would drive me crazy and I'd end up reacting to them. But I'm aware that I think some of the guys say they're Christian or at least Christian adjacent. I would probably challenge them on that and say maybe that's not the case, because you're essentially creating what you hate or what you pretend to hate. So do you really hate it? If things are measured in action rather than words, the action you're doing is creating something that you act like you hate. So could you really hate it, kind of thing? So you're pushing women further left. You're pushing them into this, as you would call it, I suppose, multiple sex partners and not getting into marriage, not having kids, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and then you get the other problem, which is ubiquitous. We're swimming in these messages that women get from mainstream culture, movies, Hollywood. I sound like a boomer at this point, but it's interesting to compare that. And then if a woman says, wait a second, like you two did, this isn't right. Y'all said this in San Francisco, and Amy, I know you were in DC.
Yeah.
This is crazy. This left-wing feminist, the spiritual, not religious, all of this seems odd. Where's the actual truth here? Had you run into just a wall of men that act like the ones we're describing, who knows where you would end up, right? So I think that's an issue. Can you compare what the messaging is like between pop culture, the default position with media, entertainment, et cetera, society, versus what they hear from these incels, I suppose?
Yeah, that's what they are. Yeah. I think pop culture is all about sexual liberation, right? This idea that you're going to be more free if you sexually liberate yourself, right? And there's other things that go into that too, like there's the denigration of like mothers and family and things like that. It's not cool or high status to be.
It's the removal of boundaries of all sorts.
Right. And there's an idea that, yeah, you're more free when you remove boundaries, which I think I think on the podcast I was on here before, I talked about how it's paradoxical, but actually putting boundaries around your behavior and your life allows you more freedom. So it's a paradox, but people think that just removing boundaries and, the more comfortable they can get with engaging in licentious behavior, then the more free they are, something like that. And that this is the true path to female empowerment, is kind of tact like men, right? Well, there's a nihilism to it too, where it's like, it doesn't matter if you're naked online. It's like, it just doesn't matter because like nothing's sacred, right? So it's just like, who cares? We don't have to be prudes,
They're treating that in a similar way. That's treating a woman like basically an object completely, as we understand. But the guys that are saying, well, you're an empty egg carton or something like this.
Yeah, also objectification.
And y'all used another term recently that had to do with the same kind of thing that was completely like a piece of meat, essentially. And I forgot what the term was. I'm sure you see it all the time, but it had to do with eggs. But anyway, sorry to interrupt, but it was the same kind, the objectifying of a female.
Yeah, right. It's, and and feminists talk about objectification. They're right about that. Like that people do reduce women to objects and sex objects all the time. And it's like, but women are participating in that now. With engaging in sexual liberation culture. Yeah. And then on the right, like these guys like think they're above it, but they're not. And it's like, it's the same thing from different angles. Yeah. It's like, it's just the same thing. Because the whole idea is just like, well, your whole worth is in how many kids you give me. And like and in your marital status and like these types of things. Children and marriage are all really good things. But there is like a bullying tactic being used. I remember I was a feminist. I went on a radio show when I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know, but it was a conservative host. And he was just so mean to me, right? And just like kind of attacking me. And I didn't come away, and he asked good questions, but I didn't come away from that radio show going, oh, he had good points. I was like, what a jerk. And then what really happened is that I gained life experience, and my dance instructor sat me down. We were friends. We had a really good friendship, and she would sit me down and ask me questions about my beliefs. That is what good me is having a friend and having love from her and being friends. And we, So what you're describing with that radio host is I see on Twitter all the time. It's like almost this new form of porn where you take lost young women and you take the content they're making and you just dunk on them and you talk about how stupid they are. And then like all these guys come out of the woodwork. Yeah. Like she's disgusting, and it's like, that's going to just drive her into the place that she's in even deeper. So it reveals that they're not actually interested in people's well-being. They're just trying to get like cheap clout, I guess. I don't know like what is really motivating it. Get clout for maybe whatever they're selling. And then like it further, like you said, it's that same energy and it reinforces the narrative. So because it doesn't disarm the toxicity on either side. It just creates a war, right? Yeah. And so no one's reaching each other, right? And we need to reach these young women. Like it is really bad that they're engaging in hookup culture and that they think that sexual liberation is empowering. That's bad. But like calling them stupid hoes is going to make them go, well, screw you. I'm going to keep doing it. They'll fall down. And messaging.
And then these guys on the right that act like they're the anti-pop culture, et cetera, look as dumb as a hip hop guy from South Central LA saying essentially the same kind of things. And I heard one of my favorite podcasters, Tom Woods, used to say something along the lines of, I'm not saying this is a CIA plant in XYZ circles, but if it were, this is exactly how this person would act to drive the culture a certain way. So I don't know that Andrew Tate is or isn't a plant. I don't know. Y'all have spoken with me offline about this other guy that I can't even remember his name at the moment, that's big online and on Twitter, and even in the Trump and Alex Jones world. I don't know that these guys are CIA plants or whatever, but if they were, they wouldn't act too different than the way they're acting.
Yeah, because it's not really like, it's just culture war fire. It's
correct.
Like fire. It's not actually solving problems from a place of like humility and good-heartedness. It's just clickbait or a different form of porn. And some of these men on the right, the way they talk about relationships it's all about like saving the West, right? I'm going to put 10 babies in you. We're going to save civilization. And there's something, and women, I don't think like that. Like it's like feels objectifying. And you're saying, I want to have kids and breed for political reasons. Is there anything like less romantic than that? And so I'm just,
that's a great point.
Southern. I hate to call her out on here, but she's talked about it publicly. But
Who is that, Amy?
Lauren Southern. She was a very popular, like kind of far right commentator, very pretty documentarian in the right wing, and she had this arc of kind of becoming like a Christian because she didn't like the way she was treated by a lot of the men on the right, and because it was that they were like, I want your like white jeans for breeding, and she was like really horrified by it.
Did she wear white jeans? No, that was stupid. Sorry.
Yeah. So, but it's stuff like that. Shows the message. Everything's so politicized now. It's like we don't know how to love each other, right? It's all to mock the libs. Everything's to mock the libs, and then and women recoil, I think, from this type of talk. Even good, even like Christian women who aren't participating in hookup culture, but they don't like this either, right? Married women don't like that. But there's something that does go on where when men talk like this, when they talk about like, oh, you're gonna hit the wall and then no one's gonna want you, and when you're in your 30s, like it's over, it's done, you ruined your life, all your past choices have led you here, and you're gonna be a cat lady. It's just it's a message of despair. And and no one's going to inspire. You want to inspire people, right, to something better and higher. You don't want to scare them into something. Even if that thing you think you're trying to get them towards is better and higher, you don't scare them to get them there. It says in the Bible, how many times, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, right?
Right.
But are using fear, right. But I want to talk about the narrative of like, you're going to be single. Yeah, some of I thought about this a lot because a lot of the narrative on like in these kind of toxic right circles is that you're going to be single and miserable and alone with cats at 40. And it's like almost like a black magic incantation. I'm like, why are you memeing that into people? Why are you talking like that to people? Because first of all, it's not true. I read something published by Ancient Faith about this. Like, I actually think the like single in a relationship thing is a false dichotomy. Because it's not like single people are like suddenly like atomized, insulated like cells. Like you will still be a daughter or a friend or, you know, a churchgoer or, you know, like a coworker. Like you're still a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's not like you're doomed or worthless just because you're single. So I think that a lot of the guys saying stuff like that are deeply insecure.
Yeah.
And they're doing it to try to get women to like lower their standards or something. Like, you're going to be alone anyway, so marry me. Like, it's a really miserable. So marry me. It's a really weird. I don't think anyone that loves you would actually talk to you like that. Like, they would be like, you'll have God and, you know, you'll be fine. You have a lot of friends. Like, it's not, you know, a lot of that happens to a lot of people. And, you know, maybe it's not your preference, but like, you'll survive it, like with faith. Is it more loving message? Sometimes I read Twitter and I think like, would my priest say this to me?
Right.
And it's always like, no. Or my dad. Would my dad say that to me? It's like, no.
Right.
So, yeah, and it's true. I think we've talked to women who have told us that this type of narrative like gets to them. Well, I want to also say that it has another negative effect of, and I've seen this, I've been kind of around like these circles for a while to see that it scares women about their age. They get anxious. They get into a relationship. And then it doesn't go well because they're kind of finding another guy who also thinks that, like, you know, your age isn't, they idolize age, right? And youth. And they end up being abused. And I know I'm old enough to know women exiting abusive relationships with guys like this who follow these kind of Andrew Tate narratives. And the right needs to account for that. I am the right, you know. So, like, it should be accounted for, I think. It's an externality of that kind of message.
Well, that kind of answers a question I was going to ask. Obviously, a lot of this stuff's online, so online. But so you guys, you girls see this in real life too? Let me ask you, Amy, you said you know women that have been through this. And do you come into contact with men that act like this, either one of you, in real life?
Yeah, like, I think it's kind of chicken and egg, but like, you know, I socialize online. We're in a more digital world all the time. So now I'm at this point where I've been on there long enough that I've met people offline who are on, like, I know both of, I know people from both. We have in real life friends we met on Twitter. Yeah, I have in real life friends I met on Twitter, and I go out and socialize. I meet people who are on Twitter, and then you check out their profile. And so people like to say Twitter isn't real life. It's like, it's not, but like the internet is real life too. Like, because people consume it. I always say you eat with your eyes as well. Like, you put it in you, it's looking back at you. I think people think they can use the internet without it affecting them, but I don't believe that. I think it's always affecting us.
Black mirror, yeah.
Yeah, it's a black mirror. And so they carry it offline. Like, one time, Julie was at a conference and saw a young guy and went up to him and was like, are you single? Like, I have a sister. I was wearing a cross. Yeah. So she was like, I have a sister. And he goes, how old? Immediately. And she, which like is fine. But then she's like, what was I, like 29 or 30? And he was like, oh, no eggs. And it's like that.
Oh, wow.
That's great, man. Yeah. We were like, and it's like, okay. And that's not even true. That's like something a young guy might think about female fertility, like you're not like infertile at 30. What? There's a very materialistic angle to all of this, right? It's all very, well, all this to say it does have real world consequences, I guess. I think that the majority of this type of discourse is online, and I think the average person who's not online would be like, I think people in real life don't talk like this because it's taboo. Like you don't say cruel, uncharitable things about women and their age, like in the real world. That's like not okay. But people that are online are hearing this, and you're right. I think it's like it will bleed into the real world. Like, where are the boundaries anymore? Like everybody's online, Yeah. But
that's interesting, Julie, that guy said that. So that was in real life. Have y'all been on dates or anything of the sort where you're, I don't know, at dinner and you're getting to know the guy and he says something about eggs or fertility? Okay, good.
I would filter out those men. Like,
yeah,
no, but it's a very, and a lot of the people talking this way are anonymous, which we've talked about as well. And the men who are, let's say, like really into Andrew Tate or really into this manosphere discourse are often anonymous. And it's because, it's like they know it's bad and they're hiding and hiding their faces for a reason. Oh, we get worried because we have friends who are older than us and have grandchildren who are teenagers. And they tell us their, 15-year-old sons are listening to Andrew Tate, right? And so it's only, it's like, it matters what's circulating online, right? What narratives are out there. The media matters. Like the new media, and it matters, and the message is coming through. Yeah. I have a friend who's maybe like 26, and she's lost so much time to worrying about her age. And she's 26. Yeah. And it's like it was psychologically damaging for her to read what these guys say. And it's like, so there must be a better way. There are better ways to combat hookup culture and our degenerate society and the negative ideas behind feminism. And I think we need I think this is kind of what we've tried to do with writing for EV Magazine, is like to explain to young women like why it's better to make different choices. Yeah. And you're gonna need like big brother, big sister energy for things to change. It can't be this like domineering, like angry thing, like tyrannical. It has to be like, we can't be at war. We have to forge friendships and be good to one another. Even if we have female friends who are younger than us who are engaging in hookup culture, and like we talk to them, right? It's like, you say, well, I don't think that's good, and whatever, but you still are their friend, you don't bully them. And you hope that like God works on their heart and that they gain the life experience to see and to change. So there are ways out of this, and we're all concerned with this like Western society that we're in that is really driving people down instead of driving them up. But we're just troubled by the backlash, creating an equal and opposite reaction that's also really negative.
Yeah, it's where I was thinking as you guys were speaking during the summer of love and with all the BLM things, it would have been like combating that with just marching out in Klan outfits or something like, I'm here to stop this. I hate the way these left-wing Black groups are going. Let's join and it's like, a sensible person would look at that and think, what idiots, you look as stupid as they do. And that's kind of what we're getting at is, how do you think we can help the men that are kind of lost up in this demonic spirit?
Oh gosh. Oh, good.
Maybe
question.
That's my role. I don't know. I'm asking two women, but
I think there's kind of a bit of an epidemic of poorly socialized young men. And it's due to us having tech for so long. Like, I think the male brain really gets grabbed by technology in a way that maybe like females don't. Yeah. Because men are so interested in like things, women are interested in people. So yeah, I don't know. Join a church. Yeah, like I don't know how you combat that because like
get a spiritual father would be
well,
good.
here's the thing, fathers, yeah, that maybe they're not getting from their like boomer parent saying like was absent of like actual presence. But they also need, I do think they need to be in a church as well, because when you're in a church, something that you can see is that people are experiencing myriad life circumstances at all. There are widows, there are young widows, old widows, there are people that never married, there are people in difficult marriages, there are people in, there's all different kinds of people. So you can't impose these sort of rigid notions of, well, if this, and happens, you're going to be miserable. Because you'll see people who are very happy and glorifying God in any life circumstance. Yeah. And just getting out in the real world and seeing the reality of how life can take all these different twists and turns, and the only constant is our relationship with God, will, I think, heal of these just really disturbing ideas that if you don't achieve this, and that, you're just going to be doomed. Well, also, I think like if you guys are so concerned with people being single and old, why don't you reach out to a single old person that you know in your community and invite them to dinner? Like if you're actually like, as you say, like think it's the worst thing in the world to end up like single and alone, like why don't you have a widow or someone in your neighborhood over for dinner? Yeah, the world we live in. But like, it's like, you know, if you're actually trying to combat these problems, then you're going to need to support like people that are in that situation instead of
you guys actually do that.
Yeah, we do. It's like,
I know
older single friends, and like some of them, it's like their marriages didn't work out. And some of them never. There's a man in our church that never married. He's sweetheart. He loves his kid. We have divorced friends and friends and perpetually single friends, and they're engaged a bunch of times. It's like, and that's also like you have to surrender to God's mystery a little bit here. It's like, you know, like for whatever reason, that's that person's path, and like you don't want to get too caught up in like it's their fault. Like life's complicated. Yeah, and I think that the internet distills things into black and white, right?
Yes.
And you see that on the left as well.
Yes.
They're like literally, they're like black and white.
Right.
And so, but it happens on the other side too, where it's like, well, if we single married people, single married sluts, virgins, it's like
no nuance. There's a lack of nuance, and it's a lower, as the IQ unfortunately drops over time, the lack of nuance, you know, goes up. It seems like, you know, and I think
someone told me on Twitter recently that you're too nuanced. I'm like, there's no such thing.
Right.
Like life is so like. But then we're engaging with this it relates to technology as well, because we're engaging with these algorithms that want us to be hardline and take a stance. And that's what goes viral. So we're being like socialized by an algorithm instead of by reality and by a community. And so I think that's a huge piece of this, right? Yeah. Like there's this guy, Josh something, and his whole account is just making like he goes to TikTok, he finds videos of young women doing pretty like innocent things, and, like enjoying, and then he makes this like grand assumption about how they must be miserable or they're naive or they're stupid or whatever, and that's and then he plugs his like course underneath of it, masculinity course, and it's like, it's just like wow, and he gets so much engagement, like it just, they love to hate. He found like a niche and he milks it and like it works, but the thing is if you have no spiritual, work in your life, then you think what you do online doesn't matter. It's just the internet, like whatever, man. But like a lot of priests are like, God's going to judge you for what you type with your fingers also. But I do, if you don't have that like higher, like regulating force, then you'll just make whatever kind of crass content you want for clicks. But Buck, I do think podcasts like yours are good too, because it's like you have like intelligent men on who are talking about the problems of the world and are aware, and hopefully can offer a worldview that is coherent and not so toxic. So there's like, you know, let's say the podcasting revolution and all this, there's a good side to it, where now people will have access to like views that aren't so black and white and polarized, if they're willing to find it and engage with it. But really it is, I do think young men need older men to talk to them, and young women need older women to talk to them. And our society has kind of broken the bonds of intergenerational relating. So like
Yep.
you are in school and you're around your peers, and then you're in school again when you go to college and you're around your peers, and it's always peer-to-peer socialization instead of intergenerational socialization. And so that's another reason I really am a big proponent of going to church, because there's people of all different ages that, I mean, ideally our church kind of skews old, our church is young, but you're going to be interacting with people with different experiences and at different stages of life, and it's good to get their perspective. Mm-hmm.
A thought occurred to me on that lack of nuance online. I wonder if that's pushed by the algorithms and powers that be, because it's harder for AI machines or bots, whatever I can call them without sounding too boomer-like. I wonder if it's harder to capture nuance with AI. And so the push towards less of it makes AI easier to basically run things, as it's probably going to in the next couple of years. Just a thought.
Well, to have nuance, you need a heart.
And it's the soul.
Yeah, and the AI doesn't have a heart. It's bodiless. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's what I would say. Yeah, because all these narratives we're talking about are really coming from here, and divorce.
Oh, yeah.
It's like all that. It's like a calculation: fertility, egg. Did she get the vax? What's her like?
Yes.
Really? Yeah.
It's the same demonic energy. Yeah. Did you get the vax? Do you have eggs? Is she single? Is she a slut? Did you wear a mask? Same thing.
Yeah, it's the same
thing. Well put. This is for Amy.
Yeah, that's
You say you have seen a narrative on Twitter among people who value marriage and family that singles must be broken down. Oh, I see. Broken people who are secretly miserable. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think like anytime, it's like the Chelsea Handler phenomenon. I don't know if you saw it. Viral. She's a comedian. Who knows how happy she is, right? I don't know. Like, maybe she's miserable, maybe she's not. But like, there's kind of this like, certainly what she's spreading isn't good, because she's, arrogant and really like secular. But there's kind of this idea of like, I talked about it a little already. Like, if you're single, you must be miserable, and it's kind of like our culture almost idolizes romantic relationships to like an unhealthy level, where you're just if you're not in a romantic relationship, you're just like worthless. And I've just seen that like bother a lot of people, and like act out of fear. And it lacks imagination. Yeah, it fundamentally lacks imagination, because some people are single because they actually have a really fulfilling life, and they're kind of like good. They're just good, and like haven't found something that like adds to it, and like that's okay. And or they're single because they're staying out of trouble, and like they haven't found like a relationship that wouldn't cause them trouble to their life, because they're a very stable person, and like when they enter someone, it causes chaos in their life. There's just so many different like scenarios for like why someone might be in that position, especially a woman. I know a lot of women who are like very stable, and that's actually like what keeps them single, because when they enter a man, they have trouble finding a guy that has his act together as much as they do. Like the business owner, and she's like, every time I date, this guy has a bad fight. A lot of guys have bad like financial situations, and like I built this, and like that's difficult for me to merge with them because they're gonna give me debt, and like it's a real problem. I just think it's like a black magic incantation for people, and it's really flat. It's like a 2D characterization of reality. It's like what we're talking about, like single, either a slut or miserable. Even though there's like, I know like very chaste single women that are like Catholics and Orthodox and Protestant, and they're assets to their community, and they're like really involved. And like, so I wonder if it's a projection, because there might be a case to be made that maybe men struggle more being single than women do, because like if a man is widowed, he finds another partner like pretty quickly. That's kind of a thing. So I don't know. That's kind of a new idea. Women are more social. Women are more social anyway. So like they're gonna get themselves out of the house and like have relationships and stuff. But some men like really depend on women to keep them engaged socially. So it might be more important for them to be married. So some of the like, you're going to be single cat lady, I think is projection of fear of it happening to them. Themselves. Because I know there are a couple single women in my neighborhood, and they kind of just like mind their own business. One is like super involved in the community. Like there's no stopping her. She's like on the board of like a million things and involved, really social. So like, and there's also like something else that just throws a wrench in the narrative of like, well, when you hit the wall, you're done. The wall is a myth. Well, there's just so many examples of people finding love at many ages. Like it's just, if you actually go out in the world and talk to people, it is something that can happen whenever. So I have an example. Just to cut into this narrative, I saw a YouTube video of this woman who had a skin condition that gave her like warts all over her face, and like by traditional standards, she's not very attractive, but she has this condition, but she handles it well. At age 50, she met another man with the same condition as her, and they fell in love and got married like 3 years later. Like, so I was just looking at that. I'm like, that is just like God's grace. And it just cuts into like everything. Like she's past the wall. She's not attractive. Like and then like someone out there is like her, and she finds him, and it's like, and she found him after 30. You know, like there's a lot of cases of things like that. So
I think part of this, we've touched upon it, but I want to emphasize it really quickly because I've tweeted things about this. I've done Instagram posts about this. I've done episodes about this, mainly in regards to how the people acted, the people we would consider our opposites over 2020, 2021. Just my 2 strikes that were hanging over my head have expired. So I can almost say it, but I don't want to and get a new strike. But my crowd and you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Those people, if they were to repent vocally, publicly, loudly, and channel their energy that they were using, which I would say is demonic energy over those years, in a positive direction, we have to forgive them. That's a massive issue for a lot of people in our milieu. Even Orthodox people are like, I struggle with this. So because I see people comment and write me personally, they're like, man, I hear this, but this is tough. Julie, can you emphasize the repentance aspect of this whole scenario that we're talking about with women? It's so weird, this arbitrary number of 7, but women that have quote unquote slept around or had a checkered past and then repenting in the church and the forgiveness, et cetera, because again, a lot of these guys are like, well, I don't care. The number's a number, they're done. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. And you make a good analogy to, it's the same thing with people who struggle to forgive people who enforced certain.
Yeah. The cult.
Yes. You're right. We if they were to repent, we would have to forgive them. This is the entire message of Christianity, is that when you acknowledge your sin and when you repent, God offers that forgiveness, and we need to offer that forgiveness to one another. I mean, it's what I said before, is that like Christ doesn't care where you've been. He cares that you're in right relationship right now. And if we hold on to past sins, there's just no way forward. There's no hope. There's no hope. Sorry. It's okay. I mean, that's really the whole crux of it. And I see this getting twisted because I was saying this on Twitter. I was saying, so many of the saints did terrible things. St. Paul was killing Christians. St. Mary of Egypt was a prostitute. And when they repented, they became saints, right? So it's not like Christ was like, but you did all these terrible things. So
right.
It's not like the church, they'll forgive you. It's not like the church was like that either. Like, and St. Paul killed Christians. Like, think about that. St. Irene said that her son's eyes gauged out of his head. Yeah. So she repented. But people would say to me, well, but St. Mary never went and got married. I still would marry her, or whatever. And people are measuring people's value by their sins rather than the depth of their repentance.
Well put.
And that is the problem, is like, if you're just hanging on to their sin and hanging on to what they've done, there's just no path forward. We never are going to disarm the fight, right? So
no, you'll never engage with anyone.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Everybody will have something in their past that makes them not good enough to relate with.
Right.
And yeah.
It would be complete nihilism.
Yeah, it's totally.
because then it sets up this thing where like, well, there can be no future then.
Yes,
because
nothing
we can't let
matters.
go of the past.
Right.
So again, back to I love the phrase divine ignorance, which I heard Reverend Vincent Lampert, the exorcist I was listening to speak recently, said that. And we had an exorcist come to our town. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. But he was talking about this. And
Yeah.
Christ forgets the sins we committed, and he's ready to like have a new relationship with us. And we should be willing to have that for others.
Yes.
Yeah. He said that fear looks to the future, love is in the present, and gratitude looks to the past. And when we don't repent, it leads to division, and the devil's desire is to divide us. Yeah.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
can't forgive the people who were enforcing those terrible things in 2020. We're just going to be divided forever, right?
Yeah.
And especially if someone acknowledges their sin, that's beautiful. Why would you not accept that?
Mhm.
That's awesome, right? Like, yes, we want
That's
to.
what we want. Right.
Yeah, it's like, but people heard me talking about this and thought I was defending sin. I am not defending sin. I'm not saying it's okay to sin. I'm saying we have to accept repentance. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. It's possible to be against hookup culture, not be pro people sleeping around, and be pro repentance, and be like, but if you did that, like, and you're sorry, you can have a new life. You can have a new life. Like, we believe that every time we take communion, my priest says it all the time. Every time you take communion, you are resolved of your sins. Like, you are born again, kind of.
Mhm.
So with people like this, I'm like, are you a Christian or not? You have Jesus Christ in your bio. And yet and then I was being told that this is why women shouldn't speak on spiritual matters. Yeah. And people were saying that to me on Twitter. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course there aren't women on this side. Because you even said that.
Yeah.
And they speak and then
I made a kind of analogy because that guy was like, I want a woman who hasn't slept with more than 7 people. You know, this magic number where she's still pure enough or whatever.
Sounds very Islamic, but go ahead.
it does. Spiritually Islamic.
And I was like, well, I want a guy who hasn't masturbated more than 10 times. I want a guy, like, we could play this numbers game for people all the time. Because I brought it up at church and a woman said to me, she's like, how many calories have you eaten today? It's like,
Ugh.
it's like you're reducing people to numerical value. And it's
But
like,
again,
I get it though. I can hear guys being like, but men have a biological reason for not liking women who've slept around a lot. It's like, science again.
but again, we need a standard. There does need to be standards.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be like, it is bad to sleep around and don't. This is also another Christian thing. There are standards. We have the 10 Commandments. We have the standards. We have the prayer rules and the fasting. The standard of Orthodox fasting is like kind of a good example. The standard is high, but
Mhm.
it's okay if you don't meet it, right? Yeah, it's not like
If you don't meet it, nice.
yeah,
But-
get it, meet. Oh. I mean, good.
Right. It's like we're all gonna sin and like fall short and like things are gonna go wrong. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think well, there's also something with this content of like taking the worst of the worst and being like, all young women are like this. They're all the like slutty OnlyFans girls. It's like well, we should also in this from a very dark place. Also, we should also say that it's good that there's it's like good that there's backlash against the culture, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't want to make it. I don't want to. I want to add that nuance as well.
Yeah,
Something needs to be done.
Yeah, like it's good that some young men are putting attention on this degeneracy.
I don't think that their messaging is good. I mean, we're like in marketing and communications, right? So like I look at everything from that lens and I'm like, I don't think your messaging is going to like sell people or you're not going to like save any souls with a bully.
Correct.
Yeah. Irredemptive mentality. Like the good news is that you're redeemed and you're forgiven. And that's what you need to be telling people.
Yeah.
You want them to come.
Not saying, well,
Cheers.
how many did you?
Not like
counting.
Right.
How long did you? Not married.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of it now, again, I'm not don't see this stuff as much as y'all have, but it seems simple to me. If I saw a young man acting like this online and he came to me and if he saw this podcast and he said, well, what do you think I should do? It's very simple. I would say you need to find a spirit. If you're religious, which I would possibly argue that maybe you're not, but maybe look into it and find a spiritual father, because someone needs to keep you in line, because you sound like an ass, for lack of a better term, online, and you're pushing people. You're doing the opposite of what we should be doing. You're making you're a feminist factory is what you are.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the churches, like the satanic panic thing in the 80s and 90s. That was an atheist factory. And why would you, if you truly were what you say you are, why would you make what you say you don't like? And so that's why I would call into question, like, are you really what you say you are? So that's the crux of it for me. We have to get fun things to close this out with. Talk about a good experience opposite of this, with this crazy raw egg nationalist manosphere or whatever, like these guys. Talk about good not advice, but good inspiration or good in the regards of men online.
I've made a lot of like friends online that there are older men online that are good and like great to DM with, and they're paternal and they'll like help you and coach you, and so I think that using the internet was helpful in converting me to Christianity, because there are good voices. You just have to like ignore a lot, and that's like
The ones that get the most attention and virality are often bad, but
goodness kind of is more quiet, I think, because it's not as inflammatory.
It's humble.
And more humble. So, and I guess the good thing is that like you can connect with people over not liking that kind of content.
Yeah.
And that will form friendships. So, I think that there are a lot of people on there trying to promote a good Christian message to other people, and people who are genuinely striving to be better people and use the internet to actually connect with people. And
it all comes back to discernment, just being very careful of what media you're taking in and not allowing those like demonic entry points to permeate you, and just being very careful of who you're listening to and what you're consuming. And the devil's really sneaky. I wanted to say this earlier, as my priest, or I think it was my priest or a priest recently said, his spiritual father said, do you think the devil's not at church? He's there every Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. Like I kind of entered into like the right and the Christian circles thinking, oh, good, now I'll just meet only good people.
Yeah.
And it's like, I met a lot of good people, but then there's still some, like the devil's still in there, like just twisting stuff. Like he'll take the message of marriage and family and just like twist it into something nasty,
I don't want to say who's told me this, just in case it's supposed to not be attributed to this person, but someone I trust immensely said the only place heaven and hell meet is in the church.
Whoa.
All right. Well, now we can plug away anything I want to plug. Apparently you're on Twitter. You can give your Twitter handles, and maybe you'll get some love after this rather than pushback.
Well, okay. Because people will mishear us. I can see how you can hear what I'm saying and think it's okay. Yeah, but it's okay.
You will be strawmanned for sure.
Yeah. Which was already happening. It'll be so Kathy Nishman. So what you're saying is
it's okay. But now plug away.
Okay, so we're both on Twitter. I'm at Julie Wrights on Twitter, and we also have a Substack called Mystic Sisters. Is it the Mystic Sisters? I don't even remember the Mystic Sisters. The Mystic Sisters, but I think it's mysticsisters.substack.com. So we podcast there. Haven't had a new episode in a couple months, but we're going to be reviving that. So yeah, and I'm at Amy the Artist on Twitter, and I have a newsletter where I share. I just started a newsletter where I'll share my paintings there first, and then you'll get like discount codes and things from my store. So it's like more intimate space than my social media. We're learning iconography. Oh yeah, and I'm taking iconography classes, and I'm trying to learn how to paint icons. So
Love
hard.
it. Julie, what about All Sides? You want to plug it?
Yeah. I am passionate about the work I do, revealing media bias for all sides. So we have a balanced news feed and we conduct media bias ratings. If people want to check it out, it's a good resource. Especially if there's like anybody in your life that you think very differently than them and you want to expose them to different media, get the gears turning. It's allsides.com.
What percentage of mainstream media is slanted left?
Oh, the majority.
Well, I know that, but like percentage, can you give me a number?
Well, I believe, don't quote me exactly on this, I believe only 7% of journalists identify as Republicans.
Okay.
It might be financial journalists, actually, the polling was done. But the majority of media outlets lean left. And especially the ones that are doing the breaking news. So conservative media is often commentary, opinion, and it's responding to the breaking news. But your breaking news is often being filtered through the left, which is a little troubling. But so we need better options.
Yeah.
But increasingly now, this could be a whole other podcast. There are media outlets cropping up that are really focused on wanting to create unbiased, balanced news. So there is a shift happening, I think, in the culture. Just kind of like what we're seeing with kind of the cultural backlash against some of the stuff we've been talking about tonight. There are shifts happening. So
awesome. Thank you guys for being here, Amy and Julie.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
What a good conversation. I hope you guys, if your immediate reaction is to post something negative, sit and think about it for a second. Think about the nuance of this discussion. Think about everything we said. And if then you still want to post a negative comment, let's hear it. Let's hear what you have to say. A lot of men, I think, need to hear this message that was put forth in this episode. So I thank you guys for listening. I thank you girls for listening. I think, if you don't know which one of those you are, you're listening to the wrong podcast. As for this show, counterflowpodcast.com, that's got all of the links. Like I said, the special club, patreon.com/counterflow, $5 a month or more gets you in the club. Follow me on Twitter @BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And until next week, you guys have a great one. See ya.
You get split in half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.